HR issues can kill you. One complaint against your company can turn your world upside down. And you spend way too much time dealing with HR when you should be spending your time on making a profit. You should talk to Bambee. With Bambee, get access to your own dedicated US-based HR manager starting at just $99 per month. They get to know you and your business while providing HR expertise and the personal touch you need and want. They're available by phone, email, and real-time chat, so onboarding and terminations run smoothly. Team members reach peak performance, and your business stays compliant with changing HR regulations. And with Bambee's HR Autopilot, you'll automate important HR practices like setting policies, training, and feedback. HR managers can easily cost $80,000 a year, but Bambee starts at $99 per month. Schedule your free conversation today to see how much Bambee can take off your plate. Go to Bambee.com right now and type in Accelerate under podcast when you sign up. It'll really help the show. Spelled BAM, BEE.com. Bambee.com. Type in Accelerate.
I have PenFed, that's a fact.
I have PenFed, that's a fact.
My credit card purchases get me cash back.
My credit card purchases get me cash back.
No one else gets these rewards.
Sergeant, that is just plain untrue.
What in tarnation?
Sir, PenFed's PowerCash Rewards Card isn't just for military members. Anyone can get cash back on all purchases.
Ah, Figgins, you've ruined my favorite song.
PenFed Credit Union. Visit PenFed.org/PowerCash. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA.
Welcome to Accelerate Your Business Growth with your host, Diane Helbig. Diane is a leading small business development and leadership coach, author, and speaker who is passionate about sharing valuable ideas, tips, and techniques with business professionals worldwide. Diane brings you the world's experts and gurus in all things business, whether it's sales, structure, social media, planning, or plateauing. Guests bring their expertise and energy to each episode. When growing your business is your focus, Accelerate Your Business Growth is the show to listen to. Got a topic or guest suggestion? Let Diane know. The goal is to make sure you have the information you need to move your business forward. Thanks for joining us. Settle in and enjoy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's podcast is sponsored by Audible.com. Audible.com is a leading provider of spoken audio entertainment and information. Listen to audiobooks whenever and wherever you want. Get a free book when you sign up for a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/businessgrowth. Accelerate Your Business Growth podcast continues to enjoy inclusion on lists of the best podcasts to listen to for small business owners, sales professionals, business leaders of all kinds. And this is due in large part to the guests. These are folks who join me to have a conversation where they share their expertise with all of you. That way you can get information that you need, answers, tips, ideas, whatever it is you're looking for. You can find it here. You can implement those things in your business, reach out to these guests for more individualized attention, and do better things in your business. Today is no different. My guest today is Jeff Atkinson. Jeff is the former SVP of Marketing at Overstock.com, where he introduced SEO and grew the organic channel from $0 to $300 million in the late 2000s. He's now the founder and CEO of Huckabuy, a software company based in Park City, Utah, that is disrupting the $80 billion SEO services industry with a technology-based approach to the organic channel. Thanks so much for joining me today, Jeff.
Thank you for having me, Diane. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here. This is we're going to be talking about stuff that I think confuses an awful lot of salespeople, marketing people, and small business owners. So hopefully through this conversation we can shed some light on a couple of things. And I would like to start with having you explain what is Google's perfect world.
Yeah. Well, just to start, I think it does feel like to a lot of business owners, to a lot of entrepreneurs, like SEO is this black box that's sort of impossible to predict, and you're at their mercy. We're really trying to, or I'm really trying to shed light on what they're doing, and a lot of that is thinking about, we spend so much time and money on what the UI, UX is for human beings. And that's predominantly what we do as marketers. But I actually argue that we should focus a lot on the UI, UX for Google. So, there's perfect world for users, and then there's perfect world for a search bot. And they're somewhat similar, but they are a little bit different. And so, yeah, we focus on particularly that sort of what's Google's perfect world. So Google's perfect world is things that they've preached for years, stuff like really fast page speed. For example, I don't know how many times they're going to have to shout from the mountaintops how much they care about page speed before people start listening. But page speed is so important, and it's not just important for the user, it's actually very important for them, because if a site's slow, they can only crawl so much on any given site in a day, and they'll move on and they'll miss valuable information that they care about. So page speed is sort of that classic example. Mobile friendliness also falls into their perfect world. A language called structured data markup, which is their sort of preferred language to speak to a website in, that falls into their perfect world. Flat HTML. So instead of these complicated dynamic front end languages like JavaScript that make it very hard for them to crawl and understand, they like sites like Wikipedia. Wikipedia is always the one that I sort of point out as their perfect website. It's flat HTML, it loads really fast. Obviously, it has a ton of user-generated content, and it's easy for them to understand. So that's kind of their perfect situation, and they've kind of realized that that isn't really happening, and the web is getting more and more complex, compounded by the fact that the web is growing at an exponential rate. And so, they struggle to understand websites now, and that's sort of what I focus on, is what the UI UX is for Google, and giving that to our customers, but just making people aware of the fact that Google cares about things that users that are different than users.
That is so interesting. So it sounds to me, I guess I want a little bit of clarification. It sounds to me like there are so many other things out there that we are making it difficult for Google to help us be found and seen by implementing some of these things that Google really doesn't like. Is that fair?
Yeah, if you think of the sort of laundry list of things that a marketer will want on a website that Google will not want, the classic example is like a chat box. So chat boxes are almost entirely, those chat boxes that show up in the lower right-hand corner asking if you need any help or whatever. They almost always are powered by third parties. So they're JavaScript. They don't provide any value to Google in terms of understanding the page. And they usually slow the page down by anywhere from 25 to 75%, making it that much harder for them to understand. So, and usually marketers don't put on this cap, this sort of technical SEO cap, when they're thinking about making decisions around the website. But you might implement a chat box that increases your conversion rate by 1%, but it kills your SEO by 30%, making it useless. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we do as marketers that Google can't stand. and it's sort of my goal is to make the internet a simpler place for them to be able to crawl and understand websites. There's a example of a customer of ours who's SAP, huge customer. They had a page on SAP.com that had over 100 JavaScript tags on just one page, which is
Wow.
tracking pixels and personalization and all. You think about all the business demands from the marketing department on a page like that, and it almost makes it impossible for Google to figure out what that page is about. So yeah, we don't think as much. I'm a marketer, come from Overstock. It's my background. I've done everything from branding to conversion optimization, everything. But people don't think as much about Google's experience on a site, which really ends up being who drives the majority of the visits. They don't think about them as, I say that they're the most important visitor that comes to your website in the day, because they dictate how many humans come. And typically their experience is a lot rougher than the human experience.
Wow, that is crazy. Oy. Okay.
Yeah, sort of a mind warp. You have to sort of think about marketing in a lot different way. And I think the reason that it happens is that, marketers usually have a certain skill set. And that skill set is, they're really good at branding and messaging and managing budgets and, picking the highest ROI channels. When you come to SEO, what I've found anyway, is that SEO is actually really a technical problem. There's a bunch of other things you need to do, but if Google can't understand your site, that you're good luck doing whatever you're doing in terms of content or whatever. So it's really a kind of a technical problem. And that's really a totally different skill set than your normal marketer has. So to put on, your CTO cap as a CMO is difficult. And so that's why I think it often doesn't get done and it gets ignored.
Right. Okay. So, is there an easy to understand way to look at technical SEO as opposed to marketing SEO?
Honestly, I can't say that it's all that easy. Probably the easiest way is to think about it. I think structured data is sort of the fastest way to get good at technical SEO. Structured data is, it's a language that's structured across websites. So there's structured data for products that shows, the brand and the price and the reviews. There's structured data for human beings. There's structured data for almost anything that can, an event, a movie, almost anything that can be visible on a page, a sports score. There's this language where you can communicate to Google directly through their language. And it's getting more complicated, but to get going on it is not all that hard. And so, when Google comes to a site and they, for years and years, they were reliant just on crawling HTML. And I don't know if you've looked at a lot of HTML, Diane, but it is not very easy to understand. This is a shortcut to help them understand. So not only does it help Google understand every single page much more clearly than they did before, but it also, they use it in lots of meaningful ways within their search results. So, how now when you search for a recipe and that recipe just shows up, or almost any query, there's these enhancements to it, a Q&A box, they'll just show you the sports score, they'll show you the movie times. All of that is being powered by this language, structured data. And so that's sort of I think from a technical SEO perspective, for marketers to start thinking about structured data as a way to optimize their SEO versus just writing content and writing content and writing content. You layer good structured data on top of a website and Google just kind of goes nuts. They crawl so fast and they understand all of a sudden what you're trying to do. So I think that's sort of the simplest way to kind of get going is, and we figured this out at Overstock years ago, but it is a very impactful. So if you structured data and then page speed is extremely important, and they give you a lot of credit if you have fast page speed. So those would be sort of the two kind of low-hanging things that I would love more marketers to think about in terms of technical SEO.
This is fascinating. So what is dynamic rendering and why is it important?
Yeah, so dynamic rendering is a very technical SEO solution. And it's actually, in my opinion, I've been doing this a long time, and I think it's the biggest sort of fundamental algorithm change that Google's made in the last 10 years. And no one's talking about it, which I find just shocking because it's really hard to do. So dynamic rendering is actually a very straightforward and simple concept. The concept is that URLs load dynamically or differently based on what calls them. So the classic example of this is if I go to a URL on my mobile phone, I'll get one experience. If I go to the same URL on my desktop, I'll get a slightly different experience. And that's really dynamic rendering. That's what it means. Their big change, though, is about 1.5 years ago. They said, well, now you can give a version for us. So when Googlebot comes and says, hi, I'm a Googlebot, you can actually give them an alternate version for them to crawl. And that, I think, because for years, all we heard was Google just wants to crawl what the user crawls. And if you build really well for the user, then you're building really well for Google. And now they're totally changing that. 20 years, they sort of boasted that was what they wanted, was just to crawl. And now they're saying, well, actually, it's getting so complicated for us to understand. Give us a version that we can understand. Now, everything has to match up. You can't trick them. You can't give them different content than the user gets or different products or whatever. But you can now give them that dynamic, sort of that unique version just for them. And that's what we've been building for the last 1.5 years, is the ability to basically give a customer their perfect version of a website for Google to crawl. So it's really fast page speed. It has structured data. There's no JavaScript. It's flat HTML. But yeah, dynamic rendering is, it's a big change for them. And it's not talked about very much at all. In my opinion, it's one of the biggest ones. The reason that they did it was all the things that we talked about earlier. How front-end websites and platforms too, like Squarespace and WordPress and Shopify, they're very difficult for Google to understand, and they see it just compounding. They don't see it as getting simpler over time. They see it as getting more complicated. And then add to that the internet is still growing at like the fastest rate ever, at an exponential rate. So you take slow page speed, all this JavaScript, an enormous internet, it's a very daunting problem for them to solve. And so they kind of open the door for this dynamic rendering to make their life a bit easier.
That's so interesting. I mean, who would have thought that it would get complicated for Google?
Oh, it's been complicated for them for years. I mean, the job that a search engine has to do to try to understand a website is not an easy one. And Google was obviously, they're the market leader, and they figured it out. They figured out how important backlinks were, and that sort of was the fundamental difference that made them understand sites way better than anybody else does. But if you look at their task to come in and crawl and fundamentally clearly understand a website, yeah, it's gotten to a point where it's challenging, if not impossible. Like the whole Flash movement. So Google can't crawl Flash. They just can't understand it at all. It's like a video. And so that just went away almost, and pretty quickly,
right.
Because people were like, well, no one's seeing this content. Well, it's because people didn't understand it.
That I remember. I remember when, Flash was like this big thing, and it's like, okay, no, don't.
Yeah, it was like the coding language of the future, and then it was like, you can't do that anymore.
Well, you try.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick sponsor break, and then I have some more questions for you.
Sounds good.
Accelerate Your Business Growth podcast is happy to be sponsored by Audible.com. Audible.com is a leading provider of spoken digital audio entertainment and information. They have over 150,000 titles to choose from, and you can listen to them on any device, including whatever you're hearing us on right now. And if you sign up at our link, which is audibletrial.com/businessgrowth, you get one free audiobook and a 1-month trial of the service. An example of a book you can listen to on audible.com is Two Brain Business 2.0 by Chris Cooper. So visit audibletrial.com/businessgrowth, explore the books that are of interest to you, and receive one free audiobook when you sign up for the trial. Today we're speaking with Jeff Atkinson about designing your website for Google's perfect world. Okay, now I have a two-part question. And the first part is, what is SERP? And the second question is, what are the features of SERP?
So SERP is also known as a SERP, is an acronym for Search Engine Results Page. So, ever since the beginning of Google, when you'd search for something, and it came back with 10 blue links, that page was called a SERP, a Search Engine's Result Page. So yeah, it's a pretty simple acronym that goes way, way back. Now SERPs aren't just 10 blue links anymore. They are enhanced, and they're enhanced with what are called rich enhancements. And rich enhancements are, like we spoke about earlier, when you search for the sports score and the sports score just shows up, or you try to make a dinner reservation and you can just book it on the right-hand side, or you search for a product and the product shows the image and it shows reviews, the question and answer boxes. So one of Google's primary, and this is really what I think about a lot, is sort of where they're going directionally. You can never, they'd make minor algorithm updates, but then they make major algorithm updates, and all their major algorithm updates are pretty directionally correct. So page speed, mobile friendliness, those are directionally, macro trends that they're going on. The other macro trend that they're going towards is to satisfy a user's immediate need for information. So I think it was this past year became the first year that users cared more about immediacy than they cared about the brand that provided it to them. So it used to be, you'd go to ESPN to get your sports score or whatever. Now you'd rather just get that sports score as fast as possible. And that's usually done by a quick Google search. So they care a lot as far as a macro trend about providing answers for people immediately, which is also the case of voice search, for example, where Google needs an answer right there for you for any given query and needs to come back with it. And so SERPs have changed a lot, especially in the last 5 years. If you think about when you searched for something, 5 years ago, what you'd get back versus what you'd get back today. And I encourage your listeners, just as they search on Google, like we all do, 20 to 50 times a day, to start looking at what they're bringing back, because it's very interesting, and it's all part of an algorithm that's getting a lot more complicated. But they really care about these enhancements. So, now if you wanted to make a margarita, you could search how to make a margarita. You could use your Google Home device and it'll read back to you the step-by-step instructions. And if you search for it on your desktop, it'll do the same thing. It'll just show you at the top of the page the step-by-step instructions. So SERPs have dramatically gotten more useful from a user perspective in the last 5 years. And one of their goals is to keep you on google.com. That's just an overarching goal of theirs, is that they want their users to be able to get everything that they need accomplished without having to leave the website. But they realize they can't do that with everything. But if you think about the stuff you can do now versus the stuff you could do 5 years ago, like last night I booked 2 dinner reservations because my cousin's coming to town here in Park City, just using Google. And I didn't have to go anywhere because they know about my OpenTable subscription or log in, and bing, bang, boom, just a couple clicks and I'm booked. So they're really trying to work on that, being able to do everything directly from google.com. And then they're also working on the immediacy trend. That's a really big, it's not just a search trend, it's just a almost like a culture trend. If I really want to get philosophic, it's everybody wants everything immediately. And you know how now you can like search your photos and say like, hey, Google, show photos of our trip to, you know, Cabo last winter, and I'll pull them up. So yeah, those are some macro trends that they're not going away. All the data that Google has acquired points in the direction that they're doing it right. And they're just going to keep, you know, I think about how cool search results or SERPs, search engine result pages are now. Just think about what they're going to be like in 5 years and what you'll be able to accomplish. So yeah, that's a macro trend that's not going away, and it's an important one.
Wow, it is crazy. And you know, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I love it because I absolutely get the information I need without having to, you know, click on a whole bunch of links to see which one's got it, because over on the right-hand side, the information's there. Yeah.
It almost even more makes Google more powerful too, because for a long time we've always trusted, you know, the #1 organic search link. Like if you click through it, you're probably going to get what you want. It's the, you know, you trust that it's the best site, and that's sort of like the fundamental reason why SEO is so powerful. But now when they just give you one answer, you're going to trust the one answer. And so you got to be in the right position. You're not going to go clicking through 4 or 5 links. You're just going to get it right away.
Right. Okay, what is a zero-click search? Is that what we're talking about? Where
That's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah, so a zero-click search would be like, hey, Google, what's the weather? And I'll just tell you. You don't have to click on anything. So yeah, there's a lot of sort of zero-click search activities now, and yeah, they're quite prevalent.
Yeah. Okay, then what is position 0?
Position 0 is when you ask Google for the weather, either via voice or via typing it on your desktop or typing it into your mobile device. It's that answer. It's that what they call rich enhancement at the top of the page. So that is, I actually don't particularly like the phrase because it actually is the first organic listing in my mind, but they do call it the, you know, 0 rank, or forget the term you just used, but yeah, that is the, it's that space at the very top that is a rich enhancement that either immediately answers your question and you don't have to click on it.
Okay. Wow. So I'm not sure I'm asking this question correctly, so I may have to ask it in 2 different ways, but what is on-SERP SEO?
On-SERP SEO is basically doing exactly what we're talking about. So it's optimizing for it's using good structured data to optimize for the user in this actual search result. So you can do it in some interesting ways. So say, you know, there's tools now too that'll say, okay, you want to rank for these 5,000 keywords. What are the rich enhancements that come back when people search for these keywords? And they'll say like, oh, there's an image box at the top, or there's a Q&A box at the top, or you're getting, you know, news feed at the top. So it'll actually come back, some of these analytics tools will come back and actually tell you what is getting enhanced on the type of queries you do. So if you're like an e-commerce company, it's way different than if you're a restaurant or a news publishing site. You're going for different enhancements in Google's results. So there's a strategy behind doing it well for whatever industry you happen to be in.
Okay. And if I'm understanding this correctly, which there's odds I'm not, but if I'm understanding this correctly, marketers should be thinking about SEO in terms of how Google is now providing the user with information.
Yeah.
Is that
Absolutely.
right? Like we want to make sure
Absolutely.
that we're showing up on the right-hand side, so to speak.
Yeah, and I always say there's no better way to figure out what they're doing than to search for the things that you want your customers to be searching for. So, if you're a movie theater, you want to see, the Joker movie times, Park City, Utah, or whatever. Think about what your user searches for, and then look at the results and try to figure out, what they're giving back to the user and who's probably capturing the business as a result. And that winner is going to be who you want to optimize for.
Okay. Wow. So how do marketers change the way that they approach SEO?
That's a great question. What I think is interesting about SEO is that it's moving at, you have a ferocious market leader, which is really quite rare to have, unless you're at Overstock and you're trying to chase Amazon. Google is so far out in front that they control so much. And a lot of what I find, so here's a funny statistic for you. So the SEO business, something like $75 billion were spent in 2019 on what they call SEO services. So the industry is almost entirely services dominated. And by that, I mean agencies and consultants. So them trying to tell you what to do and give you advice. The SEO services industry has an average NPS score, net promoter score of 0. And I don't know how familiar your audience is with a net promoter score, but essentially it's from 0 to 10. 10 are what they call advocates, meaning they'll go out and recommend your business and they'll post on social media about you. And then anywhere sort of like from 6 to 4, they're sort of neutral. Then below 4, they're actually detractors. So they'll actually tell you, don't go there, don't work with them. So you'd rather go to your dentist than talk to your SEO agency.
It's true.
It's true. So there's just this horrible reputation. I mean, it's a stunning number. We studied NPS all the time at Overstock, and it's really hard to be at 0. Like it's difficult to achieve that. They dislike them so much and yet are spending $75 billion a year. So that's, in my opinion, the fundamental issue is that the reason that it's 0 is that these agencies and consultants can't make these fundamental changes that are technical changes for their websites to keep up with what Google's looking for. So they're using old school tactics. They're saying, we'll create a WordPress blog. And then they just care about hours, like the hours that they can bill. And so they're doing a lot of writing. They're doing a lot of keyword research. They're doing stuff that is very, 2005 instead of 2020. And so when people spend all this money and they don't see the return, there's this very real churn and burn that happens. So my advice would be get rid of your agency or unless they're very technical, and hire an in-house developer or someone technical that can actually make these adjustments for you to keep up with Google. Because obviously the industry, and this is why we're out to disrupt it, because we just think it's so poorly, there's a lot of demand and people aren't getting obviously what they want. And so I would think about SEO a lot more technically. I would think about it in terms of structured data. I would think about it in terms of how fast and easy is it for Google to understand your site. I would think about it in terms of like the architecture of your site, which is a pretty basic thing that a lot of people get wrong. But yeah, you definitely you do have to wear a bit of a different cap when it comes to doing SEO really well than you would for, your social media campaigns and things like that. So you will get a lot farther down the football field going the technical route, then, and the other reason it gets outsourced so much is that it is a different hat to wear, and a lot of companies don't feel comfortable doing it. And so it just, that's an easy thing to outsource when you don't have the in-house expertise. But if you can get some in-house expertise, especially if it's technical, that's probably your fastest path to success versus, going through 4 or 5 agencies over 5 years and just hitting your head against the wall.
Yeah, boy, it's one of the most frustrating things that I hear from small business owners, because
they're
it's
so
exactly
frustrated.
like you said. Yeah, it's terrible. It is terrible. Well, I got to tell you, I mean, this is fascinating. I think this is absolutely fascinating. I learned a lot, which tells me that the listeners learned a lot. And speaking of them, will you tell them, about Huckabuy and how they can find you and what you got going on, please?
Sure. Yeah, so Huckabuy is, I've been working on for about 5 years. It's been doing this type of, we pivoted into a software company about 3 years ago. And so Huckabuy basically checks all these technical SEO boxes for you. So we automate world-class structured data. It's sort of like we have 2 products. That's our entry point product. So you can go from, 0 structured data to really world-class structured data in like a week. And then we maintain it for you. So as the website changes and as Google changes their requirements, you're always optimized. And then we have a product around dynamic rendering called SEO Cloud, which really does give you that perfect world, Google's perfect world. It gives them, it's, instant page speed, it's flat HTML, it's structured data. It's a really cool product. So the best way to get in touch with me is I would love to offer your listeners, if you just go onto our site, huckabuy.com, and fill out a contact us form and mention your podcast, I'll personally make sure to be on the phone call. If you'd like to chat, doesn't have to be a sales call in any way, shape, or form. It can just be talk SEO or whatever you got going in your business. But yeah, I'd love to promise that to your listeners. And yeah, just fill out a contact us and put in your name and email and that you listen to this podcast. And yeah, I'll make sure that I get in touch with them personally.
Wow, that's really generous. Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's a good audience.
And listeners, yeah, I mean, take them up on it. This guy knows what he's talking about. You can tell. Finally, someone in this space who knows what they're talking about.
We have so many calls where people feel very relieved to have talked to Huckabuy, because we just think about this stuff so much differently. And we, it was like the very beginning when I was saying how people are scared of SEO because it's this black box, and we're really trying to shine a light on like what they're doing. And it's not all that scary. It's just that, the agency, there's $75 billion up for grabs, and the agencies are sort of clawing onto whatever they have left. And yeah, it's time for disruption. It's time for transparency. It's time for accountability when it comes to results. And that's really what we promise our customers, and they're very happy, and they grow. Our average customer in 12 months grows 61%. And those are some huge customers. So, we really back it up in terms of our numbers. You have a sales force growing at 61%. You can imagine what that does for their business. It doesn't have to be large, though. We work with customers of all sizes. So
excellent.
That's what we have going on.
Well, I'm so glad you're disrupting in this space, because you are so right. It is long overdue. This needs to be conquered. So right on. And thanks for spending some time with me and sharing that information. And thanks for all you're doing for the business community out there.
My pleasure.
Listeners, thank you. This was, we're doing this for you, and this was something you really needed to hear and probably listen to a couple of times, and then, of course, reach out to Jeff over at Huckabuy and get some answers to your own individual questions. And I'd like to thank our sponsor, Audible.com. To get a free trial of Audible.com as well as a free audiobook, just go to audibletrial.com/businessgrowth to sign up. As always, continue to prosper and be curious, And until we meet again on another episode of Accelerate Your Business Growth, goodbye and good day.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
The Jim Stroud Podcast explores the discoveries and trends forming the future of our lives. Brain-to-brain communication, robot bosses, microchip implants for workers, and artificial intelligence replacing human workers are all happening now. If you want to know what's happening next, subscribe now to the Jim Stroud Podcast.